It had a fucking cornucopia. Daily reminder that the image on the right is the correct version of the Fruit of the Loom logo. Anybody who disagrees is either underage, a glowy, a bad faith debater, or an NPC. I agree, but what's the explanation? Mass hypnosis? False implanted memories? Psychic shift? Did we get migrated to a different server? Glitch in the matrix? Earth got blown up and recreated? Not sure exactly. The fundamental crux of the issue is that 1. Reality, not just history, but reality itself, is being fucked with deliberately by somebody or something. 2. For whatever reason, our memories are not affected by the process. Going from here, my gut instinct tells me that this is not a natural process of the universe, and that only a massive scientific institution with unimaginable resources and decades, if not centuries of research would be capable of pulling off a feat of this magnitude. Could be CERN, Battelle, or maybe some black budget site that only a dozen people on the planet are aware exists. This is the only one I believe in. Exclusively wore tidy-whities growing up, so I fucking know. There is no reason to think there would or would not be a cornucopia, while nearly every other example has plausible reasons for mistaken memory. Mandela, some guy you read about in school. Many people like that, I couldn't honestly tell you if they are living or dead. People don't even think of cornucopias outside of maybe Thanksgiving because of decorations. It's just so fucking weird. Yeah, I'm with you. Many examples are easily explainable. Mandela is one, like you mentioned. I think people have a hard time judging the recency of historical figures. Like a lot of people assume that Picasso is some old school painter and not a contemporary who died in the 70s, so it makes sense why they would get confused about Mandela. Or Berenstain Bears, which actually did have some releases under both spellings of the name, so that explains why people are sure it was Berenstain. But the Fruit of the Loom cornucopia, I can't think of a single good explanation for that. Cornucopias are already kind of a weird niche thing, and a lot of people have reported only first learning about what they are, or what they are called, thanks specifically to Fruit of the Loom. It just makes zero sense. It's funny how so many people who don't even know each other can misremember the exact same thing. Personally, I think it's a mental manipulation experiment as orchestrated by the same people responsible for MKUltra. It proves that people can be made to remember anything they want us to remember. If it was a psyop, there would be more physical residue. There would be thousands, if not millions of people out there with Fruit of the Loom merch that had the original logo they could point to. But outside of shot pictures and fan-made items, there is nothing. No trace of the old logo anywhere at all. The cornucopia is mentioned in all patents, but I don't have the pic on this device. I don't think that's true. They were mostly cheap and disposable garments. How many clothes do you have from decades ago? Modern products don't last. Dragon Brick. Elder Scrolls had so many soft disclosures, or alternatively, call it etheric inspiration, coincidental truths. Care to elaborate on this for the uneducated? In Elder Scrolls lore, dragons are shards of the overarching dragon god of time, who maintains causality in the linear flow of time. Sometimes, usually as a result of a god walking the earth, or some other divinely/spiritually cataclysmic event, the linear flow of time breaks down. This is known as dragon break. This is a temporary state, as the invisible spiritual female dragons, Jills, work to tie up the disparate threads of time back together to re-establish causality. However, all of those parallel threads of time still exist and remain canon by the end, so you end up in a situation where multiple mutually exclusive events simultaneously happened, despite being a logical impossibility. For instance, when a dragon break occurred during a war, each side observed a reality wherein they won the war and sacked the rival city, and once the dragon break was over and linear time was re-established, all of those accounts were simultaneously true. Or in the case of a character who ascended to godhood in one timeline, but not in the other timelines. After the dragon break, there exist two versions of that character, one as a god and one as a mortal. Another thing to note is that each parallel thread of time could be a different length, So one side might experience the dragon break for 12 years, another might experience the dragon break for 81 years, but both sides still exit the dragon break at the same fixed point in time. Outside of lore, the idea was put forth to provide an in-universe explanation for how to handle the ending of Elder Scrolls 2, which had multiple possible endings depending on which choices the player made. When it came time for Elder Scrolls 3, which ending do you go with? Answer: they made all of the endings simultaneously canon. If it was a psyop, there will be more physical residue. It's out there, but just as the poster who replied to you pointed out, it was cheap and disposable, so most people threw it away once it wore out. It's a boring explanation, but it makes sense when you realize who runs everything. Basically, the people in power will change certain logos, movie scenes, etc., and pretend that it was always that way. The cornucopia was 100% there. Everyone remembers it. The image in the OP is the PNG of the original logo in fact. The fact that the original logo still exists online proves it's just them messing with us and gaslighting us. Damn that fucker. Okay, so it is a real Mandela effect. I watched a show called Cosmic Disclosure on Gala, where people who have worked for the secret space program, can't remember if it was the American guy or German guy, said timelines diverge and merge like bark on a tree. So the Mandela effect is in fact shifting timelines, which is sometimes a good thing, because the US is a time core working for the benefit of the Earth, which makes changes to the timeline by influencing key events in order to make sure Earth does not experience a failed timeline, which they did not elaborate on, but said is a very painful experience. I guess maybe they meant something like nuclear Armageddon or a rogue ASI, but again, they did not elaborate. I can see why resurrecting a politician like Nelson Mandela would matter, but in my opinion, the fruit of the loom logo seems more like a butterfly effect of some other change they made. Interesting that it does not affect our memories. L. Psi. Congru. I really don't think it's a time travel thing, because that would not explain the bits of evidence that remain, like pick related. If the cornucopia were eliminated by time travel, why would someone still have written an article referencing the cornucopia while there is literally a big logo right above the text that has no cornucopia? Whatever is happening seems more complex. It almost gives me a creepy feeling, as if someone did a search and replace on reality and swapped out all the logos, which of course would not catch text descriptions or parodies. Well, I do have a theory that would explain it, but it's kind of hard to describe. Basically, I think the Matrix is constantly changing things, including people's memories, and it relies on our memories to know what to change. So people who are very plugged in to the Matrix will never experience the Mandela effect, because everything they remember about X would be changed, including their memory of it. It's only those who are beginning to unplug from the Matrix who will experience it, because it can never read nor control our memories as well. This explains why it's usually small trivial things, because larger things will be remembered by people who are still plugged in. Only something, which is a weak memory in the mind of everyone who is plugged in, but a stronger memory only in the mind of those who are collectively unplugged, could ever be experienced as a Mandela effect. P.S. I actually think this is what the Matrix movie meant by déjà vu, when something is changed inside the Matrix, but the term Mandela effect did not exist at the time the movie was made, so they just went with another similar concept, involving something on the periphery of one's memory, just like the experience of déjà vu. Well, I just thought of a reason why it would want to change seemingly pointless things, if your theory is correct, to make those unplugged from the Matrix to sound crazy. That's actually genius for keeping people plugged in. Gaslight the people who are plugged in into thinking those who are less plugged in are psychotic conspiracy theorists. Meanwhile, they are right, and their reality is changing, while the people plugged in don't subjectively experience the reality change. All of a sudden, I'm wondering if there are degrees to this reality-changing thing, where those who are extremely unplugged experience a lot of things that make no sense to further isolate them. In particular, I'm thinking of gang stalking, even though that has never happened to me, because the guy on the show I mentioned said there are soulless humans on Earth. Unfortunately, he did not give statistics. These could be used to give dirty looks to awake people on the street, making them paranoid, and again, isolating them if they talk about their very real, but impossible sounding experiences. There was never a cornucopia. People are misremembering because the operation of memory is based partly on your imagination. Neurons fire in sequence to recreate memories all the time, which is how it works, but this process is not perfect. Details can be altered with repeated recalls, and if you get enough people to insist a false detail was in fact true, the effect compounds. Falsities become certainties, and high self-confidence puts the discrepancies down to external interference rather than personal failing. I can't be certain, but I am almost positive that this was an experiment in mass memory rewriting. It's possible that this can only work with small details if they are repeated enough, but even a relatively minor alteration of how any event is perceived by the masses can cause massive change. All that really needs to be done to achieve this is to repeat the falsity as a fact constantly until the original memory is lost. Insider here. I don't work there anymore, but the company had a contract with the CIA to do a mass personality testing experiment. The fruit part of the logo was permanent, but the cornucopia was printed in an ink that dissolves after some years all at once. Our company agreed to say we never put a cornucopia in there in the first place for a handsome sum in return. The CIA wanted to see which people would insist they saw what they saw, and which people were more easily controllable sheep who would assume there was never a cornucopia because our company would not lie. Those who insisted there was a cornucopia were much more likely to be selected for government programs, etc. Okay, wait, so the Mandela effect changes what exactly? People have pictures here of old stuff, the way things used to be, so the pictures don't change. But for example, would the person's book, A Song of Ice and Fire, have changed to A Song of Fire and Ice, have changed to A Song of Ice and Fire, while their picture stayed the same? Thus, the effect on the timeline is specific to the printed books themselves, but has nothing to do with any records of the books, either physical or in memory. Literally just a silent transition of branding, and the company acting like it never happened. They literally got morons to mythologize their goddamn underwear. Fruit Loops did the same thing, because they joked at the country club that brain-dead idiots will call it the Mandela effect. In short, you're stupid on both sides. And for the indigo pill out there, you are stupid for lying about the Mandela effect being real, because when people are brain-dead stupid enough not to believe in psyops like this, you can actually Mandela affect the psyop beginning to start with. So basically, we are all fucked, psyop or no. Mass hypnosis? I think not. I remember specifically when I was a little kid. I was in the cellar getting undies. I picked up a pair of looms and studied the cornucopia behind the fruit. I thought it looked cool. I don't know why it caught my attention that day, but I've had that memory long before Mandela died. I've always liked cornucopias. Seeing the logo without one just feels so wrong. Dead internet theory gives me this anxiety because the internet has been a great resource and I've always felt I've underutilized it, but it would always be there. Like a big library I've never fully explored, but now it's there when I want to. Now it feels like a small book kiosk with the same old magazines that haven't been changed in 10 years, and I have this anxiety because I feel I'm losing this resource, this ability to seek and find anything I wanted. Every post feels like a message in a bottle, thrown in a sea of piss, unread, unseen, unheard. So much creative potential inside of me, inside all of us, just wasted, choked to near death before it can even take its first breath. The internet is now an abortion of the mind. It really feels like there's no one on the internet anymore. Literally dead internet theory. Even without introducing anything paranormal, there is no way individual voices can be heard or often even distinguished under the flood of bots, page shells, glowies, etc. The funny thing is that most of their interactions are probably with each other. It's like going to an old video game and all the PvP lobbies are just bots fighting bots. To this day, for me, this phenomenon is the only true solid evidence that I've experienced in my personal life for something truly supernatural going on in the world. I remember in like 2012 or so, being a kid and coming across some old Fruit of the Loom underwear in my laundry room and being stunned that the logo seemingly changed. This was way before this idea was anything mainstream. I certainly had not heard anyone talk about it prior to this incident. I just noticed that the big brown horn was gone. I didn't know the word cornucopia at the time. At first, I assumed it was a knockoff brand or something. Then I tried finding all of the Fruit of the Loom clothes I could find, only to be super weirded out that none of them had one. For a while after that, I would notice that I just never saw the cone on any of the clothes ever, and I had no idea what happened. Nobody had brought it up to me. It was just something I always knew was there because it was a super iconic design. Then all of a sudden it was gone. I even brought this up with my mom and dad, and even my mom agreed that it was strange. This stuck with me until years later, when I realized that tons of other people experienced this same phenomenon. How the fuck do you logically explain this? Yeah, there is no logical explanation for it. Everyone gets emotionally upset and starts lying and accusing everyone else of lying. It does show something about how human memories are completely controllable from outside sources. Time-traveling AI fucking around with timelines, or someone trolling, or good actors trying to make us win. It's amazing how history gets completely rewritten in real time because normie minds are unable to keep track of each passing moment. I'll never forget when my friends started talking about rare pepes and dank memes back in 2014. Memes themselves became a meme, and now online communication has permanently changed. There's a gigantic one in Italy that's even more well known and widespread in the country than any American ones. I am going to copy-paste and I'll post about it. In the year 2001, people of 9 to 13 were watching a kids show named Melavision. The show was about a fantasy village with actors doing kid stuff and some cartoons now and then. So, the main character was at the point of the show where he was building something with cardboard, glue, and these sorts of things. He takes in his and a yellow lace. He was on the verge of explaining what he was doing with it when the show just cut out for an emergency news of 9/11 happening. For years, we were all plagued by that yellow lace. At that time, there was no internet, no streaming services, and what you saw on TV was just a one-shot if the channel never aired it again. We discussed it multiple times over the years on the early internet. We discussed it on forums and on early social networks. We even made memes over that. We have plenty of jokes, like saying the terror attack was all about preventing the elf from explaining the yellow lace meaning. A lot of us remember it clearly. Then, 1 year ago, the actor of the elf appeared again, speaking about his time on that famous show, and answered the question that a lot of people had, the yellow lace. It never happened. He had no yellow lace at all, and we were all dumbfounded by this information. He was even lightly pissed off because a lot of people he met during the years always asked him about this yellow lace. The show got re-aired as a celebration. We all saw that very episode that was aired. Just that single day, and surprise, no yellow lace at all. So the problem is some people say it never had a cornucopia, and most people say it did. This means they're not changing everybody's memories. They could be changing only some memories. Or alternatively, there could be a merging of timelines somehow, where it was different in each of these two timelines. There is a cosmic disclosure episode called Time Wars, where someone who claims to have worked in the US secret space program says the US has Time Core, which is responsible for preventing what he and the others on the show call a failed timeline. Their HQ is 50 years in the future. If they need to go back and say, stop a political candidate from getting assassinated in order to create a better future, they will. Apparently, they even use this futuristic spacesuit-looking thing because mixing microbes from different time periods could be catastrophic. Of course, us viewers could just be getting taken for a ride with this guy, but I don't know, I think it's true. They have said the Mandela effect is a merging of the timelines, I'm pretty sure. The one that gets me is the sun is now different. I know as you age, your eyes lose color sensitivity, but it just feels like the whole world is more bleak and bland. I am making an effort in my life to add color. Everyone should smile, even when they're sad. Overcome evil with good. So, I had stumbled onto some interesting information. I'm not going to say anything or go into detail because I stopped bothering years ago. The CIA is able to make active camouflage over anything, using specific, brutalistic, or fractal patterns. You will look at one of their cars monitoring you, and then it will drive away. But in your mind, you will be absolutely convinced you just saw a giant egg, or disc-shaped UFO, or something else that the mind floods the visual space with. The hallucination is so perfect, you may even hallucinate noises from it that fit this perception if your prover is stronger than your thinker as a person. This is where some of the UFO stories come from, and it's definitely where a lot of abduction stories are tied back to. Something that happened in a lot of public schools was testing this on mass scales, which came up with some interesting artifacts people have nostalgia for now. While this does not have anything to do with the wider theory of the Mandela effect, I saw information that led me to believe that multiple things in consumer media were peppers with the next step up in this kind of camouflage. Either the cornucopia is still there, or it was never there, but it has been manipulated to no longer be perceived by those who once have perceived it. Think of it kind of like they live with the sunglasses and mass propaganda. Think of it like that, but it's on the level of ideas and perceiving entire facets of society. I will say it's very much due to them tapping into the human consciousness spectrum. When you've spent years exploring abandoned buildings, you start to notice the subtlest signs of neglect. There might be a building behind a fence with intact windows, no graffiti on the walls, and a well-maintained fence. But there is something about it, the slight dustiness on the windows, the rust on the front door, or that unmistakable feeling of abandonment you get, something that's different from buildings where employees simply leave for the weekend. I discovered this kindergarten by chance. At first glance, it seemed perfectly fine. Windows intact, lace curtains, snowflakes stuck to the glass, and even a freshly painted gazebo in the yard. But something about it felt very off. My internal radar screamed abandoned. I waited a few days to confirm my suspicions, visiting the kindergarten regularly, but seeing nothing out of the ordinary. Finally, one night, armed with a flashlight and a camera, I decided to go and investigate. The front door was unlocked. It did not take long to realize I did not need the flashlight. Streetlight flooded the interior through the large windows. A strange rustling sound came from the first floor, among the discarded furniture. My heart skipped a beat, but then a large grey cat leaped out from under a pile of junk. I have no idea what it was eating, but it seemed to be enjoying being the sole occupant of the three-story building. Overall, it was the usual kind of abandoned place, a kindergarten with toys scattered around, tiny chairs, and drawings on the walls. But then I went upstairs. Right under the roof, a heavy iron door stood wide open. Inside, the room was nothing like the rest of the building. No mess, no dripping ceiling. It was neat, almost strange in its orderliness. There was a sofa with the bed still made, the blanket thrown back, and the linen appeared fresh. A bottle of cola still half full, and an open pack of sausages sat on the table. Yet, there was not a soul in sight, apart from the cat. If the kindergarten had a night guard, I would have seen or heard him. On the wall above the sofa, a clock hung, covered in fake ivy. But I was so disturbed by the oddness of the scene that I did not think to check if it was working. I felt an unease settle in my stomach, so I left without taking a photo of the room. At home, I started looking for information on the kindergarten. To my surprise, it had been abandoned for at least 10 years, but the website was still active. The phone number was listed in the city's kindergarten database. I nervously called, but of course, no one answered. That's when things started getting even stranger. A couple of years ago, the site had posted a notice about enrolling new students. Just recently, someone had posted a question on the guest page, asking if it was still possible to enroll a child. I found several reviews from parents. All of them, based on their dates, were written long after the kindergarten had been abandoned. Even more unsettling were the contents of the reviews. One in particular stood out. Here is what it said. The kindergarten is not bad. The first impression is that the building is somewhat dilapidated, deserted, even neglected. I left my son there when he was 2 years and 2 months old, and though he did not cry, I left with a heavy heart. The stairs felt oppressive and the teacher was late. But on the second day, my son was eager to go back, and within a month, he was completely settled in, even falling asleep in the teacher's arms. But the main thing is that the kids almost never get sick. Anyone who's been in a state-run kindergarten since they were 2 will understand. I almost convinced myself this review had been written by a real person, until one question hit me. Where was this mother taking her son? The memory of that visit lingered. I gathered my courage and returned to the kindergarten, but this time, the doors and windows were all sealed shut with sheets of iron. There is no moral to the story, no nightmares, no ghostly teacher lurking under my bed, no knocks on my window at night. It's just that this is, without a doubt, the most unsettling abandoned place I've ever come across in my life. I like stories that include a bit of folklore. Thanks, Anon. I'll share one that's been passed down in my family. It's kinda gruesome, and the fact that it's been passed down at all has always struck me as bizarre. So, I'm part German on my dad's side. His family came to the US just before World War I broke out. This story is about one of my great-grandfathers. They claimed he saw the black dog in Germany twice. Saw it in the same place both times, at the edge of the woods by his house. First time he sees, someone died. Second time, someone else died. These were important people to him, family members and such. He is spooked. Not long after, he comes to America, seeking to make something of himself. He's a great carpenter, and gets a job doing that. Finds a good girl, settles down, has a gaggle of kids. Opens up his own carpentry shop. Suddenly, one night, Grandpa has a dream about the black dog. As always, it's standing at the edge of the woods of his house in Germany. Next day, World War I breaks out. He tells his wife about his earlier experiences, mentions the dream. They both decide he's going to be a pacifist and not fight in the war. But not long after, he is found dead in the streets outside of his carpentry shop, seemingly strangled. Killer was never found. It was his wife's belief that he saw the black dog one last time. I have a weird one. Driving to California, passing through Texas. Pass through an area where tons of people are selling fruits and vegetables on the side of the road. Sign says the town is called Folklore. I buy some shit to snack on and skedaddle. On the highway, I check the bags, and everything is entirely rotten. Very weird, because I'd already snacked on a few things, and everything was fine. Now suddenly, it's all shit. Toss the bags, because shit stinks. Fast forward. Driving home from California. Should be passing through Folklore. Nothing there. No people, no sign, nothing. Never even found the place on a map afterwards.